going on, guys? Ben from JK Gear and Gadgets. In today's video, I'm going to be installing a Barnes four-wheel drive aluminum tie rod. It's pretty new to the market, so I'm excited to throw it on my Jeep. But let's go ahead and dive into it. Let's go ahead and take it out of the packaging and see what it comes with. So as long as this tie rod is half as beefy as this wrapping job is, I think we're going to be good. So Barnes, if you're watching this, I highly suggest giving your packager a raise, because this is freaking phenomenal. There's no way this thing's getting damaged in shipping. It looks beautiful, but holy crap. I think taking the packaging off is the hardest part. Alright, so finally got it unpackaged, and here we have it. The beautiful aluminum, solid aluminum tie rod. Also comes with a steering stabilizer bracket, the U-bolts, and our two tie rod ends. They are the 1-ton offset tie rod ends. So you're probably wondering, Ben, how much is an awesome kit like this? Well, it's only $200, $199 to be exact, and that's ridiculously cheap for an aluminum tie rod setup. If you go and look anywhere else online that sells aluminum tie rods, you're not going to find one for 200 bucks. Crap, I mean, my rough stuff steel one that I have currently, I think that was $185. So I mean, for 15 more bucks, you can get the benefits of aluminum. So you're probably wondering now, hey Ben, what's the benefits of aluminum? Well, stay tuned. Another video coming up shortly. Probably within the next week, I'll show the difference of steel versus aluminum. But real quick recap: aluminum, if you ram it with a rock or bend it, it'll bend and then spring right back. It has a memory. Whereas steel, if I go and hit this on a rock right now, it's going to bend and then stay bent. I've bent this plenty of times. I've had to hook my winch up to it and bend it back. And I think it still has like a natural curve up from where it landed on a rock. But we're taking this out, prepping for 36 hours of UORI. I really don't want to bend my tie rod during that event. So went with this new Barnes tie rod. So let's go ahead and put it on the Jeep and then do a review on it. All right, so our first step is to get a measurement of our current toe in. What that is pretty much your alignment. Because we're taking off part of our steering, it's going to throw it off. But we can get a measurement to make it close enough to where our steering is back to how we have it now. So what I did is I use a paint marker right here on an edge of a lug. So I'm going to measure from this exact same point over to this side where I made another marking. It doesn't matter where you put your markings, but as long as you're measuring in the same spot after, it's going to get our alignment close. I'll try to make another video in the future of how to do an alignment at home and be pretty much spot on. But if you're not comfortable doing it, after you get this tie rod on, we'll get it close, but then you can drive and get an alignment at your tire shop or wherever you go. Alright, so the next step is going to be to remove our current tie rod. I don't have a factory tie rod to show you guys how to do it, but it's extremely easy. You're going to take off your steering stabilizer bracket, which is attached to the tie rod, get that out of the way. Then we're going to go to each side of the tie rod and take off those end links. So take off the nut and then just hammer that freaking your current tie rod off, let it drop to the ground. Who cares? Throw it in the trash. Alright, real quick tip. One thing I like to do before taking off the tie rod is measure the distance from the end of our hydraulic ram or your stabilizer to the center of where your clamp is, just so we know we can put it back in the same spot that it was. So before I take off my rough stuff tie rod, I'm going to go ahead and grab a jack and put some pressure on it. So my next video or whatever, I can show you guys the difference between a steel tie rod and an aluminum one. So I'm gonna go grab my jack and bend the crap out of my rough stuff one. So that'll be a fun video, so stay tuned for that. All right, so now that we have our tie rod removed, I'm gonna go ahead and talk a little bit about something I mentioned earlier. These tapered inserts. I got this, once again, from Barnes, because the GM 1-ton end links use a different taper than the JK. So, with these, you have a couple different options. These are gonna be the easiest. You drill out your factory knuckle to 7/8 to 7/8 using a drill bit or a step bit, however you want to drill it out. And then this insert goes in from the bottom and is going to match this taper now. So you can either get these inserts or get a reamer. Barnes sells the correct reamer and you can ream your knuckle. But I've heard of some people even just slapping this on there and calling it good. It matched up with the JK, so it's up to you. Since mine are already drilled for the rough stuff tie rod, I'm just going to throw these in and call it good. Now, one thing I'll mention is just because you drilled out your knuckle does not mean you can't go back to stock. Synergy sells the flip kit sleeve just like this. So if you ever do want to go back to stock, go over to Synergy, get their flip kit little sleeve like this, and you would simply put it in and it would be able to go back to a stock tie rod. So next up, we're going to grab our tie rod and find out which side end link is for which. One side is going to be a left hand thread, the other is going to be a right hand thread. So just make sure you're not sitting there turning righty-tighty on the left hand thread and expecting it to go in. So we're going to find that side. I'm going to grab some anti-seize just because we're putting an aluminum part to steel threads, and that usually some wonky stuff happens when that sits for a while. So I'm just going to put a little bit on these threads here, not too much, not going to go overboard. And then just pretty much set it up, and then we're going to finalize the length once it's under the Jeep. But the anti-seize is definitely pretty important. Even thread this nut out a little bit more, and do that to the other side. So now that we got some anti-seize in, I'm going to go ahead and thread in this tie rod end link a little bit more, because I know that it's at least going to want to go into about here. It's important to get both end links out about the same length, just because the more threads you have in the actual tie rod, the stronger it's going to be. You don't want to only have, an inch of threads in there, because it's going to want to wallow out. It's going to want to strip the threads. So just make sure both sides are even and you don't have way too many threads showing on one side, because that's not going to end good. Alright, so let's go ahead and we'll call it good there and make the final adjustment under the Jeep. Let me go set the other tie rod to about a finger length of thread showing. Next up, we're going to grab our little Zerk grease fitting and put it right in on top. I'm just going to put them hand tight for now, and I'll get my crescent and snug them both down later. But these do not need to be tight because they're very easy to break off. Alright, so as you can tell, it's mocked up and ready to go under the Jeep. It's a lot easier with two people, but we're going to hold it up underneath the Jeep and see if we need to make the end links longer or shorter so we can bolt it in place to our knuckles. Also, if you did drill it out with a 7/8 drill bit, now's the time to put those inserts in. That's kind of a pain. You got to do one at a time, just because they want to fall out on the ground. But put those in and then put this on. One thing I will say is great thing about this kit is that it does have a wrench flat to turn and make your adjustments, whereas my rough stuff tie rod did not have that, so I had to use like a pipe wrench to turn it, and it left all those gouges on it. So it's nice that Barnes included a wrench flat area, so that's pretty smart. So I got the tie rod under the Jeep. I had to finagle it in here just because the tires were left on it. You can't just put it straight in. Went in at an angle and brought it in. So now I got the insert on the end. I'm going to raise it up and thread the castle nut on. Alright, that's all we're going to tighten that side down for now. We're going to move over to the other side and do the exact same thing. Now, real quick tip. If this side does not want to line up, you can either adjust your end link out or have somebody turn the wheel until you can get it to line up. Like it'll go up in. So a little bit shorter, and that's pretty good. So throw the insert in, throw our tie rod end in, and go ahead and start our castle nut. So what we're going to do next is tighten our castle nuts. And I think it's a 15/16. Yep, 15/16 socket. And we're going to tighten it on up. Alright, so once you get that nice and snug, you don't want to over torque it. You're going to line up the castle nut with the cotter pin hole. Once that's in line, throw the cotter pin in, and then move over to the other side. So now that we have both sides tightened down, we're going to grab our measuring tape and measure from those spots that we did on our tires, and then we're simply going to turn our tie rod until we get the exact same measurement as we did before. That's going to get us super close to our alignment from when we started, but I still recommend either measuring it out, aligning it yourself, or just taking it to a shop and getting alignment. That way you know it's driving straight. So I'm about 3/4 off, so that means I'm going to have to extend my tie rod, make it longer. So now that I have the tie rod set to exactly where it was before, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that the tie rod ends are level. I'm going to hold the tie rod and slowly tighten each jam nut on each side with a large crescent wrench. We're going to want to make sure that the tie rod ends are sitting nice and level. Before we start tightening down the jam nuts, to prevent the actual tie rod itself from moving, we're going to want to go and get one side hand tight like so, hold the tie rod, and then move over to the other side and do the same thing. So we got that hand tight, and then now we're going to use a crescent wrench, put a little turn on this side, and then go put a turn on the other side. What you don't want to happen is try tightening this side down, because it's going to want to turn the whole tie rod. But a good thing is that Barnes includes the wrench flat, so we can get a big wrench or a big crescent wrench, hold this while we tighten down our jam nuts. The jam nuts are extremely important to tighten down a lot. The tighter you can get them, the better. The reason you want to tighten down these jam nuts is because that's what locks those threads in super tight. If you leave it loose, those threads are going to move in and out and eventually strip out the threads of your tie rod, and the tie rod's going to be trash. So once we're done adjusting everything on the tie rod, our next step is to reattach our steering stabilizer clamp. Barnes actually includes one for you, just because the factory tie rod is thinner than the 1.5 inch aluminum that they provide. So they give us this bracket, and it simply uses the U-bolts to go around the tie rod, and you put your steering stabilizer or whatever you're running right through those bolts. One thing I will say though is that this is a bare steel, the bracket, so you're either going to want to paint it or powder coat it before you put it on, because it's going to rust pretty quick. But in my case, I already have a PSC hydro assist clamp. So if you really don't want to run the Barnes bracket, you can get any other 1.5 inch steering stabilizer clamp that's on the market. But the fact that they provide a clamp for free is pretty cool. So now that we got everything done, last step is to grease it up and tighten down those grease fittings. You don't want to tighten down those grease fittings too much because they'll strip. If you don't have a grease gun, when you go to get an alignment, just ask the shop if they can grease the tie rod ends, and they'll be more than happy to do it. So I'm going to fill it up with grease. We'll take a look at it in the sunlight, see how it looks, and then I'm going to take it for a test drive and see how my alignment job was. So I just got back from a little test drive on the highway, got up to 70, no wobbles, nothing, the steering wheel was still straight. So as long as you mark your tires and get it back to that exact same measurement, you'll most likely be in spec with your alignment. If not, no big deal to take it to a shop
and get it aligned, especially if you needed it anyways. But I'll have a video soon of me flex testing this aluminum one versus my steel rough stuff. For $199, this solid aluminum tie rod, you just can't beat it. I've always wanted to go aluminum, but the price point really turned me off for most of them. But for 200 bucks, I could not say no to this. So stay tuned. I'll do some reviews on it later down the road. I mean, I know I just put it on, so we're gonna have to take it on some trails and really abuse it before I can give it a final say. But the install was simple. It looks super amazing. I'll probably keep throwing some WD-40 on it just to keep that nice, clean, polished aluminum look. But I'm sure you could paint it if you want to, but it's just gonna get dinged up anyways. It's nice that you can leave it bare and it's not gonna rust. Thanks for watching, guys. Like always, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe if you will. Check out my other videos. Doing a couple giveaways here coming up, so stay tuned for more of those videos. And I'm gonna talk a lot more about this upcoming 36 Hours of Uwharrie event. I'm doing it with Puddle Jumper. He's on Instagram. He also has his own YouTube channel, Jeeping Adventure. So go check him out, subscribe. He's going to be putting out some good videos too. But back on topic with this Barnes aluminum tie rod. Highly recommend it. It blows the competition's price out of the water. And you know, it's still solid aluminum 1.5 inch. So I don't see me breaking this thing anytime soon. It's a huge upgrade compared to my rough stuff. Stay tuned because I will be dropping a video of like a torture test, a bend test between this aluminum one and the rough stuff. It's sitting over there all bent up, but you don't get to see it until that video comes out. So until then, take care, guys. Bye.